Hello, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's already 1 after 5. Well, I'm sure there's going to be a couple more attendees that come in as we get going. But to start out, we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about the survey that you guys might get at the end of the webinar today. We really appreciate it when you guys fill those out for us. It helps us to know how better to serve you guys with the different types of programming, as well as how we did with the program itself. So please remember to fill out the survey at the end of the webinar. Also, this is a family program. It is rated PG. Profanity or inappropriate behavior will not be tolerated in either the chat or the Q&A. So we do ask that you keep all of your questions and comments on topic for the presentation at hand. Failing to do any of this will potentially lead to you being muted or even removed altogether from the live stream. If you're not familiar with Zoom, we do have the Q&A and the chat open and available today. So with that, on your chat box, if you look at the drop-down menu below, it might say all panelists, it might say all panelists and attendees. Make sure it says all panelists and attendees in that drop-down. That'll allow everybody to see everybody's comments back and forth between us. So today we're going to talk about Killdeer. My name is Julie Gabrielson. I am an education coordinator in Elko, which is in the northeastern region part of the state here in Nevada. I do work for the Department of Wildlife. On the back side of this webinar, you'll probably hear from her towards the end when it comes to question and answer time, is Jess Wolf. She's also an education coordinator over in the western region outside of Reno. So today, Killdeer. We're going to start out with taxonomy. And what is taxonomy? It's the classification and naming of organisms in an ordered system that is intended to indicate natural relationships, especially the evolutionary relationships. So as you can see from here, we've got all the different levels of how they're named and classified. We're starting at the kingdom level with the Animalia. And essentially that is animals. Then we go into the phylum, which is the vertebrates, in the class of birds, which is aves, and ordering down into, the order of shorebirds, and then the family, which is actually the plovers, and that's the Charadriidae, and the plovers is the more common name for this particular family. As we continue to move up into our little pyramid in the taxonomy, into the genus is the Charadrius, sorry, and then the species itself is the Killdeer. Oh, we jumped a few pages here. Let me go back to that. And that's the Charadrius vociferus, which is actually the Killdeer itself. So in the bird order, there's actually 27 different orders of birds, and you can see the different orders specified by some of their size, some of their looks, some of their colors, and some of the other characteristics is how their character determined which order and which family they're going to be into in that class. So with the Killdeer, commonly known as the plover family, there are actually about 36 species of plovers. Some of their like features are long wings, moderately long legs, short necks, a straighter bill, and it might even be shorter than their heads as far as their bill goes. Their wings are typically pointed at the tips, usually with a white wing stripe on the underside, and the flight of these birds is really fast and direct. These are in fact considered shorebirds, and they look very much like it, but they're actually found in all habitats. So if you look on this slide, you can see some of the other different plovers that are in the same family as the Killdeer. We've got the black-bellied plover, the piping plover, the American golden plover, and the mountain plover. The two lower ones, the American golden and the mountain plover, are frequently found in non-water habitats like the Killdeer as well. So what are the Killdeer like? What are their features? Both sexes pretty much weigh and stand as tall as the other, the other gender. So both the male and the female are going to be about the same in length and weight. Their wingspan is going to be pretty similar, and their lifespans are pretty similar. On average, their lifespan goes from about 3 to 5 years, but there have been some noted to live up to about 10 years. A group of killdeer is actually known as a season of killdeer. They are proficient swimmers, even in faster flowing water. So even though we typically don't find them around water, they are very proficient in the water. Males in general, even though they have very similar characteristics and from a distance, they're pretty difficult to tell the difference between the males and females. Males in general have more dark feathers around their bills and eyes. Also, their bills are usually a little bit thicker near the head, and sometimes their heads are shaped a little differently, usually in the forehead area. And on it, the same criteria actually follows when it comes to identifying the genders of the juveniles and the chicks. So I'm going to turn my video off so that we can focus on videos to come and these slides ahead. So as far as predators of a killdeer, what threatens a killdeer? It's actually preyed upon by common crows, raccoons, skunks, weasels, badgers, otters will eat them. They're also parasitized by various types of worms. So they can deal with a lot of different things out there. And it's not just the chicks and the eggs that are preyed upon, but it's also the adult birds. What is their habitat? So you can typically find killdeer in open ground with low vegetation. And that includes lawns, golf courses, driveways, parking lots. The species is one of the least water associated species of all of the shorebirds. And their diet, mostly insects. They feed on a wide variety, including beetles, caterpillars, grasshoppers, fly larvae, and many others. They also eat spiders, earthworms, centipedes, crayfish, snails, and they will even eat a small amount of seed. And these guys are the master of deception. These birds are well known for their crippled bird or broken wing act. And in that, they actually pretend to be injured and an easy prey to lure the predators away from their nests. They'll crouch down and they'll droop their wings and fan its tail out and scream what sounds like a kill deer, which I have a video of, so it does it way better than I do it. Once the intruder has actually been left away, so once that predator is lured away from the nest, the killdeer will suddenly, be okay, and then it'll fly away or move to a different direction. Different tactics are used with a horse or a cow or a deer. Those animals, they know that there's no interest in the eggs themselves or the chicks, but just the simple act of walking over them could destroy the nest. And in those cases, the killdeer, they'll rarely leave the nest. They'll actually just stand right over the top of it, and they won't move until the animal or the unknowing predator just about to step on the nest. And then it'll fly at the face of the intruder and strike it in the muzzle, even right in the nose. It'll kind of slap it around, and it usually causes the animal to retreat and the nest is saved. So if you've ever wondered if wildlife scares other wildlife, yes, they do. And this is a good example of that. So here is a video. So that adult actually had some chicks that were held up in some shade. They were moving from one area to another area, and that adult was trying to lure me actually away from those chicks. You can kind of see how it screamed at me, and it did everything that it could to get me to follow it instead of staying nearby the chicks. So how do they mate? How is their courtship? Males actually claim territory long before they actually select a mate. To attract a mate, the male will stand in his chosen territory, and he'll make a 2-note call for hours at a time. It's usually a high-pitched and then a low-pitched. I'm not going to do that call for you because I don't do it near as well as they do. The male may also end up scraping the ground. They'll also fly over the nesting territory and float and using deep wing beats and also another killdeer type cry. They'll do this all times of day and night until they find their mate. And I've seen that regularly where they fly overhead, making sure that their presence is known to any potential mates. Once killdeer have paired up, they'll scrape out the nesting site, which is actually known as the scrape ceremony. The courtship display happens whether or not the pair have mated in the past or not. The male will typically, you can see in this bottom left or the bottom picture, the male will lower his chest to the ground and he'll scrape a shallow depression with his feet, while the female lowers her head and then approaches the male and then takes his place in that nesting site. The male will actually stand with his body tilted forward, the tail raised, calling rapidly to the female, saying, "Hey, come over here. I found a great place for the nest," is essentially what he's saying. And then shortly after that is when the act of mating actually occurs. Killdeer are generally monogamous. Even though they may not necessarily mate for life, they will stay a pair, and they do form really close bonds for the entire year at least. And then some do continue to stay a monogamous pair for several years. A lot of times they won't find another mate unless something happens to their current mate, even when they're not breeding. So what about their nest site? These guys are notorious for picking nests in inconvenient locations, inconvenient for us as humans anyways. You can see the upper left-hand corner, that's actually a nest that was in just an open field, was not gonna be in anybody's way. It had a chance of maybe getting mowed and walked over that way, but in general, it was no inconvenience for anybody or anything. The bottom corner, you can see that's actually out in a park. Top left section of that corner, there's people in that same area where this killdeer is nesting. And they really are very tolerant of humans because of this. In the main picture to the right, hopefully you can see that close enough, that's actually in a driveway. The owners of this driveway put those boulders around it, the bigger rocks, so that they paid attention to where that nest was and they didn't run it over when they were pulling it in and out of their driveway. They will choose low-lying vegetation like we talked earlier and actually scrape out that depression in the gravel. The nests are usually unlined, except for a few stones, maybe some sticks. Sometimes they might pick up bits of shell or trash that they might add after the egg laying has been done. And the stones tend to be similar color to the eggs, and they're really difficult to find them because of that, because they camouflage the eggs so well. They may make several scrapes not far away from one another. That's actually to confuse predators. And the pairs will both defend the territory, and individuals will spread out while foraging to make sure that that territory defense is covered. So here's 3 different nests. You can kind of see the difference between, the different types of rocks, and, how one might have a little bit more grass or some wood sticks in it, while another one didn't put anything but the rocks in it. They potentially will lay up to 3 different broods per season. Most often, they'll only raise one of those broods successfully. The female will typically lay 4 eggs over the period of about a week. Killdeer parents don't start sitting on the eggs to incubate them until the last of the eggs has been laid. So even though the first laid egg spends a longer time in the shell than the last, they actually all still hatch within about 24 hours of each other. The killdeer embryo inside the first laid eggs, they don't even start developing while the others are waiting to be laid. But once they feel the consistent warmth of the parent killdeer, then all 4 of the embryos in the eggs start developing at the same time. All right, so we have another video for you. It takes about a month for killdeer eggs to hatch. Killdeer are known as precocial birds, and we'll go into that description here in just a second. And so precocial birds stay in the egg, in the actual shell, twice as long as altricial birds. So they have more time to develop. Sometimes one egg hatches later than the others, or it doesn't hatch at all if it's infertile or if it got damaged at some point. But that's generally how they'll work that. And the parents, once those chicks have all hatched, they'll take care of them immediately. The parents, as you saw in the video, the parents actually carry the broken eggshells away from the nest and dispose of it completely. They do this to avoid predators, not only any smell that might be left in them, but the inside of the shell is not camouflaged like the outside. It's actually kind of a bright light blue, and it can be more reflective for anything flying overhead, like the crows that will prey on them. So back to being a precocial bird. You can divide baby birds into 2 different classes. There are the nest fugitives, which are baby birds that flee the nest immediately after hatching. And there are nest dwellers, baby birds that remain in the nest for several days and even weeks to be tended by parents until they're mature enough to fly. Nest fugitives are called the precocial birds, which is what a killdeer is. They mature early, and that's because they've spent more time in the shell developing. So once they hatch, they're often very strong-legged. They're easily, they get up and they start moving around, and they've got all their feathers, even as downy and cute as they are, and they are ready to get moving as soon as they hatch out and dry out. So some of the baby birds will leave the nest as soon as their feathers dry out, which could be just a few hours from hatching from the egg. So when all the eggs don't hatch, we talked about this just a few minutes ago, on the same day, the parents actually get kind of panicky. And if you ever watch a nest, you can see as they're progressing through, and the first egg is hatched, the second egg is, if you get this chance, once that 3rd egg starts hatching and that 4th egg is or isn't hatching, you can see they're starting to get a little nervous about, okay, it's time to get moving. And the reason why is because these chicks feed themselves. The parents do not feed these babies in any way. So they can't afford to hang around too long and wait. Instead, the parents really need to find a reliable source of food and water for the chicks to get for themselves, because the young will lose weight within hours if they don't find food and learn to feed themselves immediately. Here's another video of them leaving the nest. You'll also see that the chicks will frequently mimic the parents, and that's what they do. Is they'll follow parents looking for food and water. They'll follow the head bob and the fast movement, alerting themselves for any potential threats or risks. The chicks, although they will not fly right away, despite them leaving the nest right away, they actually don't fledge until they're about 30 to 40 days after hatching. And they generally move to the moister areas in valleys and on banks of rivers. They'll frequently is where you'll find the juveniles, mainly because it's a reliable food source for food and water. They may be cared for by their parents for up to 10 days after fledging, but in general, they will, at that point, they will be on their own. And they reach reproductive age at about a year old, and that's when the killdeer cycle starts all over again, starting back again with the male finding territory and making his call and display looking for a mate, and they'll start all over again. All right, we're going to go for questions now. I tend to speak a little fast, so please feel free to go back to anything that I discussed. I'm happy to cover it again if need be. Feel free to use the Q&A or the chat for questions.
Thanks, Julie. That was super informative. We don't have anything yet, but we'll give it a few minutes. If you have any thoughts, definitely put them in our question and answer bucket or the chat. Just to let everyone know I saw a few latecomers coming in. This has been recorded, so we are going to put it up on our YouTube channel so you can watch it later if you'd like.
Thank you for sharing that, Jess. I did forget to mention that. So we do have a question that popped up. What areas of Nevada is the bird normally found? So killdeer are actually found throughout Nevada. There's no specified place that you could or could not find them. They will move a little bit further south in the wintertime when it starts getting too cold, but in general, they do live throughout the state.
So are the killdeer in the same family as sandpipers?
So killdeer are actually, let me go back to my slide for that, and we'll just confirm that. Sandpipers are in a little bit different class, if I remember correctly, but they're still in the same shorebird group. Let me go back so I get the, yeah, so sandpipers are in the shorebird order. So if you look at, that's the Caradiiformes. Those scientific names get me every time. So that's where the sandpipers, so they're in their own family, but they are in the same order. So plovers, which is the family that the killdeer are in, is in the same order as shorebirds, and which is where sandpipers are.
Awesome.
Hopefully that makes sense.
Thank you. Can you go over what they eat?
What they eat, we can definitely go over that. They eat a lot of bugs. Insect spiders, earthworms, they'll even eat some seeds. They eat a lot of different insects to include beetles, caterpillars, grasshoppers, fly larvae, snails. So there's quite a bit that they will eat.
Sounds delicious.
I know, good dinner, right?
Yeah, okay. I think I'm gonna have to eat some of those for dinner tonight.
There we go.
Awesome. If there aren't any more questions, I think that we can probably end this here, but I know Julie is always open to get more questions in her email. I know she had that up for a second, and I am too. So if anything pops up in your head, definitely shoot us over an email.
Absolutely. Yeah, we definitely encourage that contact, whether it be during the webinar or after. I don't know if my video is still up. I can turn that back on. My email address is on that as well. So we'll go ahead and we'll start to wrap it up and see if we get any more comments or questions coming in. Somebody commented that they'd like to run rather than fly. They are ground dwellers, and they do spend a lot of time on the ground.
We do have a few more questions come in. Can you go back to what their predators are?
Oh, yes. We can do that. Predators. So there are several different types of predators. These are not actually all of them. I know like a bobcat would prey on these guys as well, and it's not on the list. But typically herring gulls, your common crows, raccoons, skunks, weasels, badgers, otters have been known to eat them, along with types of worms. They actually deal with parasites quite a bit. Several different types of worms can be a predator to them as well.
Awesome, thank you. Do you know at what age they start to really fly?
At about 40 days, between 30 and 40 days after hatching is when they'll begin to fly. That's when they start spreading their wings.
Perfect. And then the question came up, do they migrate?
Great question. We were discussing this earlier. They migrate to a warmer area, but they don't necessarily follow a traditional migration route. So up here in northeastern Nevada, when we start getting really cold days and nights, they will move to a warmer part of the state further south and then come back up here. But they won't necessarily move, down to Mexico or completely southern region of the United States.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Do the mother and father raise the children together?
They absolutely do. They will take turns back and forth, switching back and forth on the nest. I actually thought I had a video of that, but I must not have put that one in here. But they will take turns switching back and forth, and one will go and eat and kind of refresh itself while the other one's sitting on the nest, and you'll hear them cry to each other and call to each other, and the other one will come in and relieve the other parent.
Must be nice to have some help around the house, huh?
Absolutely.
Do you know how fast they run and fly? That one's kind of a tough one. I don't know the answer, that's for sure.
No, and I don't have an actual, like a mile per hour or distance per hour type thing, a feet per second. I don't have anything like that, but they are known to be very quick and very defined in their motion. And what I mean by defined is they can make really sharp, quick turns. They don't take as long to take off. They can take off into flight from a standing position. They don't have to run to take off like some might do. They are just a quick moving bird in general.
Yeah, speedy little guys whenever I see them.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on the parasitic worm and where and how they get that parasite?
So they'll get that parasite from the ground. It could be something that they eat. It could be something that actually crawls up onto them and invades them. It's like an invasive type of parasite that will find them. And they could deal with I want to say one is a roundworm that they end up ingesting at one point, and it ends up becoming an intestinal problem.
No fun for anyone.
No.
Do you know if they'll eat sunflower seeds or not?
I do not know. They do eat some seeds, but it's typically the much smaller seeds. So I don't know if a sunflower seed would attract them. They do primarily feed on insects. So the seeds, I believe the seeds is pretty much just as a filler when they don't have any immediate insect available.
They want that protein.
Absolutely. I'm with them.
Same here. We've got 3 more questions, if you don't mind going through those really quick.
Nope. We can take as much time as we need.
Perfect. So are they protected?
They are not protected. They are not considered threatened at all. They actually have a very good population to where there are no worries or concerns for them at this point.
I believe they are protected under the federal migratory bird.
Yes. Thank you. Sorry about that.
It's my favorite law. I really nerd out about it.
No, I'm with you. You're good.
Why are they called killdeer?
It has to do with the sound. So a lot of birds are named after the way that some of their calls sound. And so at one point, an observer or a scientist decided that that's what it sounded like when one of the birds was flying over, and that's how it got its name.
What is the best terrain for them to live in?
They like to be in the open ground with low vegetation. So a lot of their nesting sites will be, I'll go back to that slide so you can see. Their nesting sites will be in gravel, bare ground, short grass, which is partly why they use a lot of yards and driveways and parks, places like that. And it gives them a better visual for any potential predators coming in.
Perfect, thank you. I have a question. I have encountered killdeer in Smith Valley in the summer. Do you know of any place in the North Valleys of Reno that they have been spotted? Do you want me to?
That's all you.
Awesome. So I've seen them kind of all around. I definitely have noticed them in the like Swan Lake area near Stead. I think I've seen them in like the Cold Springs lake kind of over there. They're kind of all over the place. If you just go on to like All About Birds or something like that, I definitely suggest looking up how they sound and really getting familiar with that, because you'll usually hear them before you see them.
Absolutely, and that's a great point, because you definitely hear them before you see them. I always know by ear when they're coming into my area long before I see them, and I frequently have to really search for them in order to see them.
Yeah, they've got some pretty good camouflage for our areas.
Yes, they do.
Most of the pictures are of them on the ground. Do they ever go in trees?
No, I have never seen one go in a tree, not even for just a resting. I've never even seen them rest on a fence line. They are typically known as ground birds. They fly overhead, and they do fly for escape means and everything, but they do a lot of their mating, their nesting, their brood rearing, their feeding, all of that by movement on the ground.
Perfect. Yeah, I've never noticed one in a tree either. So this is a comment, but there was a killdeer nest by the parking lot by my work in Damani Ranch in Reno a few years ago. And they definitely can be pretty good at living in urban environments, as you see by some of these pictures and by what you noticed down there in the parking lot. They can nest in some odd locations, that's for sure. And then we have another question. Will we be doing any more native bird presentations?
That's a great question. I myself do not have any planned. I'm not sure what some of my counterparts around the state have planned as far as other birds. But it is something, if you watch our Facebook page, we do post all of our upcoming webinars and events on the calendar there, so you can follow that. And we do try to make sure that they're posted at minimum a week out, so that you guys can get signed up for them and see how they'll fit into your schedule.
Definitely. And we do have some past webinars that went over some other native birds that we have that are on our YouTube page, but definitely put that in the survey at the end of this so that we know what you're interested in.
Absolutely, please.
Are killdeer hunted?
Only by their natural predators, because as Jess said, they are, even though they are not a bird of concern when it comes to being an endangered species, they are a protected bird, and so they do not have a legal hunting season on them.
They're pretty tiny too. I don't know if they would be worth much food.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions, but if anything pops up in your mind, definitely shoot us over an email or give us a call, and we're happy to answer anything that you have. Absolutely.
Yes. And thank you, Jess, for helping out. It's having a little extra hand on there. So, we'll go ahead and wrap it up unless we get some more, which we'll continue to answer some questions if you have more. But until then, get outside and embrace the outdoors. We do recommend that you embrace, the responsible recreation side of it as well, which is not only just getting out and enjoying your country around you, but taking out whatever you might have brought in and leaving the area in even a better shape than it was for the next person that might follow you. You can find out more about responsible recreation at responsiblerecreation.com. But get outside and have fun, you know, and just be smart, be safe, and have a good time doing it. There's lots of stuff going on out there, and we encourage you to join us in all of it. Any more questions? Did we have any more?
There was one question about how big they get, but I answered that. They're pretty tiny.
Yeah, I can take it back to that slide real quick if you want. I do have a slide with the measurements. There it is. I'm speeding past it. One more. So they average 7 inches to 11 inches in length. Their height is from like 2.5 to 4.5. Sorry, their weight is 2.5 to 4.5 ounces. So that's not even half a pound on the heaviest bird. Their wingspan will get anywhere from 18 to 19 inches from wingtip to wingtip, if that gives you any idea of their size. Their height is probably from probably their toes to the top of their head would probably be equivalent to the shorter in the length category. So right around 7 inches would probably be accurate for the height.
And they got those nice long legs.
They do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing any more questions popping in.
Okay. We'll leave it with this then. So please remember to fill out the survey for us at the end. And thank you again for joining us. We appreciate this one. All right, guys, have a great night and have a great weekend ahead. Thank you again, Jess, for all of your help.
Anytime.